2023 NFL draft coverage continues on the podcast with NFC draft grades on the Fired Up NFL Draft podcast.
You're listening to the Fired Up Podcast Network. Let's get fired up.
And as always, I'm your host, Brian Lamb, joined by Sean Balzer, both of us from the NFL Draft Lounge website. What's up, Sean?
What's up, Brian? Let's talk some draft grades.
Yeah, last week we did AFC, all 16 teams. This week we're shifting gears, going to the NFC. So I guess let's just go ahead and get started and dive right in with the Arizona Cardinals. Obviously, they had the third pick, moved back with Houston, then moved up for Paris Johnson Jr., offensive tackle out of Ohio State, B.J. Ojulari, edge out of LSU, Garrett Williams, cornerback out of Syracuse, player that I really love, and Michael Wilson, the wide receiver out of Stanford, backup quarterback in Clayton Tune, even a sixth-round pick, late pick, Dante Stills, defensive tackle out of West Virginia, another player I like. Ended up giving them a grade of B- on the website.
Yeah, so unlike last week, this week what I did is I went through and gave everybody my personal grades and then checked to see what your grades were. And like last week, we don't have a lot of significant disagreements. I think like 4 or 5 that are more than like one grade level. This one, you got B-. I wrote A-. So we're kind of close. I obviously thought they did a little bit better. Really like the trade, both at least 2 trades here. I mean, the big one is obviously with Houston. They're not only are they able to get their guy. I mean, they needed help on the offensive line. Kyler's clearly asking for it, clearly needs it. And they were able to get their guy, and not just get their guy, but get their guy and a future one in a draft that should be much better than this one. And I think that needs to be heavily weighted. I mean, Arizona Cardinals are not going to be a good team next year. I doubt the Houston Texans are going to be a good team next year. So they're already starting 2024 with 2 likely high picks and 2 shots at, some serious draft capital. It may be in the form of a trade, or maybe not. If they end up with the first overall pick, you could be looking at a situation where they're in the same position as Chicago, where they traded down and were able to pick up a lot of draft capital. So really love that trade for them. And then I believe they picked up another 3 from Tennessee for next year as well. So A-. I think Monte Ossenfort did a great job here in his first draft. I like most of the guys that you said they're late as well, but definitely ace the top of it.
Yeah, I mean, looking at their haul here, just kind of really consistent value across the entire draft. Even somebody like Dante Stills as a late round pick, he's somebody that I profiled on the website, which I guess I should talk about, because if I don't talk about it, who's going to talk about it? But that's Dante Stills, defensive tackle out of West Virginia. He was really somebody that I liked as just a late round guy. So moving on to the Atlanta Falcons, kind of made a big splash with the 8th overall pick in Bijan Robinson, running back out of Texas. Came back in the 2nd round on day 2 for Matthew Bergeron, tackle out of Syracuse. Zach Harrison, the edge out of Ohio State. And then on day 3, they went secondary for Clark Phillips III, DeMarco Helms, and then an interior offensive lineman in Jovan Quinn. So I gave them a draft grade of C+.
So I wrote C-, but I think I should have graded harder here. I mean, I hate this draft. It seems that the Falcons they were one of the most run heavy teams in the league last year. It seems like they want to keep that up. Listen, Bijan Robinson is an incredible talent, and I'm not going to beat to death the idea of taking running back in the first round every single time we do a podcast, but they had much, I think we can all agree they had much bigger needs. Jalen Carter, would have been a much more significant piece to their future than a running back would be. But taking Bijan, I mean, I like Matthew Bergeron. I guess that's why I probably didn't give this a D. But they were already the run heaviest team. Are they gonna run the ball even more? I don't see that changing a whole lot under Arthur Smith. DeMarco Helms was one of my late round guys that I liked out of Alabama as a safety, but overall, I mean, I hate this draft.
Yeah, I mean, I love Bijan Robinson as a player. Hate seeing him coming off the board 8 to a team that already has depth at that position. Obviously, he's a significant upgrade, and you have to give Desmond Ridder weapons across the board to beef up that offense and give him an opportunity to keep that starting job. But kind of like what you alluded to, I just think that there's other needs on that team that they could have addressed. Maybe come back in the third or fourth round for a running back, and sort of gotten the same type of value out of that.
They did pick up Jeff Okudah from the Lions for a 5th round pick. Kind of factor that in, so that maybe sneaks him up to a C- for me.
Yeah, I don't really factor that in, but yeah, certainly a significant pickup. Moving on to the Carolina Panthers. Obviously, they moved up to the first pick for Bryce Young, quarterback out of Alabama. Came back on day 2 for Jonathan Mingo, wide receiver out of Ole Miss, and DJ Johnson, the edge out of Oregon. And on day 3, Chandler Zavala, guard out of NC State, and Jamie Robinson, safety out of Florida State. So they only had 5 picks, but I thought that they made them count, which is why I gave them a draft grade of B. My only real knock here is Jonathan Mingo. I just thought that they could have gotten a better wide receiver there, maybe a more impactful player, certainly at the 39th overall pick. But that they opted to go that different direction.
Yeah, I'm not far off from you here. I mean, the big moves to swing for Bryce Young, and they gave up a whole lot to get him. Maybe too much for a quarterback of his size. But I'm a Bryce Young fan, and I believe in Bryce Young. So, I mean, if you can get your guy, I commend you for going up and doing it. There's certainly no guarantee that you'd be able to do it in the future. So, I think a B is about right. I might be a little bit low on the rest of it. Jonathan Mingo at 39. We talked about that pre-draft as a guy that was kind of getting that late first round buzz all of a sudden. I think we both had him a little bit lower than 39 though. Yeah. B is about right. And, Stephon Gilmore, we'll talk about that more in the Cowboys section of this, but they did, pick up I believe a 5th for him as well.
Yeah. I mean, just going back to Mingo, I just don't see where he's an upgrade.
He's an upgrade on nothing.
Right. Well, I mean, yeah, but you have Terrace Marshall, you have DJ Chark, Adam Thielen. Obviously, I'm not, that Adam Thielen doesn't move the needle for me, maybe as much as it would have 4 years ago.
It's
Chenault. I mean, I get it. It's an upgrade, but I mean, man, you could have made just a much better pick there. Is my criticism.
I don't blame them for adding a weapon, but it's going to be a pretty interesting experiment. I can't remember the last time that an offense had an entirely new everybody at the skill position. Bryce Young, I mean, the starting wide receivers are probably DJ Chark, Adam Thielen, and Jonathan Mingo. The Hayden Hurst is new at tight end, I believe. Miles Sanders new at running, but like the entire offense is new. It'll be interesting to watch how this project, how they gel together.
Yeah, I mean, you used a 2nd round pick in 2021 on Terrace Marshall Jr. So, where do you go with that? But moving on to the Bears, I mean, had plenty of picks here, right? 10th overall, they went Darnell Wright, offensive tackle out of Tennessee. Came back on day 2 for Javon Dexter, Tyreek Stevenson, cornerback out of Miami, who I love, Zach Pickens. And on day 3, Roshan Johnson, running back out of Texas, Bijan's teammate. Tyler Scott, wide receiver out of Tennessee, Noah Sewell. Terrell Smith, Travis Bell, Kendall Williamson. I gave them a C plus. This is a team that I really loved what they were doing in the offseason, kind of making some smart decisions, some smart pickups in free agency. And I think that they kind of did so here, but some of these guys I thought that they could have done a little bit better with.
Yeah, I don't want to say they knocked it out of the park. I mean, I really like what Ryan Poles has done in his 2 drafts plus an off season or 2 so far. Helping both sides of both the offensive and defensive side of the line, I think was definitely necessary. Got to protect Justin Fields better. He's taken somewhere around 3 million sacks already. But I do think I'd give it a B minus or so. Being able to make the massive trade down, collect the future capital. Also did a small trade with Philly to go from 9 to 10 and still probably get the guy they wanted. I think that the big negative here for me, because I'm trying to calculate and everything outside of all the positive trades that they accumulated capital, they did trade what ended up as the 32nd pick for Chase Claypool, and that's going to ding you a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, obviously you have to protect Justin Fields. I don't know if just one player addresses that need and fills that need for you. I would have come back in maybe the 3rd or 4th round with maybe an offensive or interior offensive lineman, something like that, to just give you a little bit more depth there. Maybe another weapon or 2 as well. I see a bunch of guys that are depth guys, 3rd, 4th on the chart. I don't see a lot of starting potential here outside of maybe Wright, Stevenson, and Sewell and Roschon Johnson.
Yeah, I was gonna say Roschon Johnson and Tyler Scott, I think will have their opportunity to get into the starting lineup. I don't think that Roschon made a lot of sense for them. I mean, I like him as a 3rd running back, or potentially 2nd, potentially their future 1. Just didn't feel like a big need to me with Khalil Herbert and Donta Foreman on the roster.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. I'm actually looking up Deontay Foreman's contract. I just want to see what
it was. Maybe 3, maybe 2 million.
Yeah, I mean, he signed a 2-year deal here, which this is just making for fantastic.
It wasn't for more than 2 or 3 mil a year.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I don't think that's a long-term deal, so maybe that's kind of where they were going with that. With Roschon Johnson, he's somebody that broke his hand, I think the first day at the Senior Bowl, but a lot of people kind of projected him to have a breakout performance there. So obviously that's why he fell down the board a little bit. I mean, also you're behind one of the best running backs in college football in Bijan Robinson, so hard to break out there. But even with a 4th round pick at 115 overall, I think that was tremendous value for them. And, I think that was a significant move for him.
Yeah.
So moving on to the Dallas Cowboys. First round, they went Mozzie Smith, defensive tackle out of Michigan. On day 2 in the 2nd round, they went Luke Schoonmaker, tight end out of Michigan. DeMarvion Overshone, linebacker out of Texas. And on day 3, Viliami Fehoko Jr., defensive end out of San Jose State. Akeem Richards, tackle out of North Carolina. Eric Scott Jr., cornerback out of Southern Mississippi. Deuce Vaughn, the running back out of Kansas State, who went viral with that video on Twitter with his dad where he was a scout. And Jalen Brooks, wide receiver out of South Carolina. I gave him a C minus. I'll be honest with you. I just don't see a lot of value here. Mozzie Smith, yeah, like I get it. Maybe he was the best defensive tackle on the board there. I thought they could have maybe addressed another need, maybe gone after tight end. I think with Dalton Kincaid getting picked right before him, I think they panicked, and it showed.
Feels like it.
Luke Schoonmaker there just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I don't think that he's anywhere near 58 overall. And even moving down the board, I just don't see. Honestly, Sean, I just don't see any value. That's where I'm at.
I'm with you. But I want to crush this draft. I'm not going to hide my bias over here, but it does feel like they sat there and the guys they wanted just didn't quite make it, and they panicked to make some decisions. I mean, Mozzie Smith, I don't think anybody really expected him to go that high. I believe he had a great combine and such, but the guy had a half sack last year in college. I don't know if they're trying to, if they're worried about Jalen Hurts and the sneak, the so-called tush push. I don't know if that's what that's about, but that just seemed like a reach to me. I mean, Michael Mayer was the easy selection there to me. You could have taken my boy Sam Laporta, would have loved that for them. But I just didn't like that pick. And then, Schoonmaker there in the second, you kind of after a run of quality tight ends that felt too high for me. Deuce Vaughn. I mean, I don't have anything against Deuce Vaughn other than the fact that, he doesn't make it up to my shoulders. He seems like a weird compliment to Tony Pollard. I don't know if maybe they're going to sign somebody in free agency. Maybe they'll bring Zeke back, but with Pollard just on the franchise tag, kind of expected them to address running back maybe a little bit higher than that, or with a bigger back. And then wide receiver, I thought was a higher need for them. And then they took one with one of the last picks in the draft. So I think C- is fair. I wanted to be harder. They did make two trades that I thought were smart, and picking up Stephon Gilmore and Brandon Cooks for relatively cheap. Obviously they're both getting up there in age, but I think those are smart risks.
Yeah, I mean, Deuce Vaughn makes for a wonderful story. Don't know if he makes for a wonderful player. I'll leave it at that.
Hey,
by the way, Dante Foreman's going into his final year of his contract.
Hey,
I wanted to go back to that.
Got that page to load up. Yeah, listen, Deuce Vaughn, outrageously productive in college, and part of me wants to see that translate because it's fun, and obviously he comes from K-State. There's an easy Darren Sproles connection there, but he's like 5'5". I mean, we'll see.
Yeah. Moving on to the Detroit Lions, 12th overall. Honestly, they made some headlines with Jahmyr Gibbs, running back out of Alabama. Came back 6 picks later for Jack Campbell, linebacker out of Iowa. On day 2, Sam Laporta, tight end out of Iowa. Brian Branch, safety out of Alabama. Hendon Hooker, cornerback out of Tennessee. And Broderick Martin, defensive lineman out of Western Kentucky. And then on day 3, Colby Sorsdahl, offensive lineman out of William & Mary. Then Antoine Green, wide receiver out of North Carolina. I gave him a B-. I really can't knock a lot of what they've done here. Jack Campbell, maybe it's a little early for him. Even Jahmyr Gibbs. But everything that you've heard, those guys were coming off the board anyways. So, you lock into the player that you want. You know what you want. Could they maybe move back and gotten both of those guys? Sure, but you need a trade partner to do so, and I don't know if they had it. Really my only thing is they waited till the 7th round to address the wide receiver position. Jameson Williams missed last year with an injury. And then obviously this year he's suspended for gambling for, what is it? I think 6 games.
Yeah.
So, there's a question there, but I tell you one pick that I do like, and I know that we talked about this a little bit, is Hendon Hooker there in this 3rd round. Kind of a developmental quarterback, a little bit older, but I think that he's really going to fit in there.
Yeah, I mean, we've gone over this a little bit. I want to crush this draft. The problem is they took a lot of my favorite guys here. Um, Jahmyr Gibbs, I love. I don't love him at the 12th pick. Jack Campbell, is in the conversation for first or second best off-ball linebacker. Um, I, I have to crush them for taking a running back at 12 and an off-ball linebacker at 18. Those two positions there to me is just a horrendous use of resources. They did have 2 first-round picks because of a good trade, so I have to give them a little bit of credit there. And then they come back in the second round and take Sam Laporta, my guy at tight end. I do love that pick. I can't argue there. Getting Brian Branch at 45, I think was a steal for them. Love that. I'm a big Hendon Hooker fan. I've been saying it all off season. I can't stop now. So as much as I hate the idea of taking a running back at 12 and an off-ball linebacker at 18, for me, those were the rest of this draft. They did such a good job. I wrote D plus. I think that's a little mean. I just really hate the use of resources in the first round. Like if you're going to take a running back, if you're set on taking a running back, and maybe they love Gibbs really that much for some reason, but if you're going to take a running back, I'm not sure why you didn't just stick it, I believe 6 and just take Bijan. The idea that Bijan went 8 and Gibbs went 12. I mean, I do think Gibbs is a great talent, but for him to go 4 picks later is kind of nuts to me. But again, getting Laporta and Branch and Hooker there. I mean, Hooker at 68, I think is a steal. Obviously, we don't expect much out of him this year, but I think it's a great landing spot for him. And I'm really excited to see what he can do in 2024. Another issue with this draft is by taking Gibbs at 12. I mean, you forced DeAndre Swift out of the locker room and over to Philly for fairly cheap. So hate to, so I got to ding them there a little bit. I wrote D plus, maybe I should say C minus. They got better. They got some good players. They just some horrendous use of resources.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with my camera. I mean, I get it. Look, I didn't know where Bijan Robinson fit in this first round. I mean, I'll be honest. I thought 8 was early for him.
Sure.
I thought maybe he was mid-teen, somewhere in that range. So seeing he'll come off 8 with Gibbs right behind him, I think maybe the NFL was just higher on both of those guys. Obviously, we know that Detroit was because they moved DeAndre Swift. So there was obviously something there that they didn't like in him and something that they loved in Gibbs. I think maybe Gibbs is a little more versatile, kind of can do more in the passing game and some of that stuff. A little bit. I like it. Don't love it. But I think they kind of knocked it out with some of this, their other picks here. So moving on to the Green Bay Packers, obviously all in on Jordan Love now. With that 13th overall pick, they went Lucas Van Ness, edge out of Iowa. On day 2, they came back for Luke Musgrave, tight end out of Oregon State. Jaden Reed, wide receiver out of Michigan State. Tucker Kraft, tight end out of South Dakota State. Colby Wooden, defensive lineman out of Auburn. Sean Clifford, quarterback out of Penn State as a backup. Dontavian Wicks, wide receiver out of Virginia. Grant Dubose, wide receiver out of Charlotte in the 7th round. I mean, just kind of looking at it, obviously they're trying just to surround Jordan Love with as much talent as they can. Did go with a kicker in the 6th round in Anders Carlson. I gave him a C plus. Some of this is a little puzzling to me. You're going to go Luke Musgrave and then come back around later for another tight end and Tucker Kraft. Love Jaden Reed. He was hitting the speed numbers at the Senior Bowl with the Zebra technology. So he was super high on the miles per hour, but I'll be honest, he didn't really, impress me there. They've lost a lot of talent on that roster. I just don't know if it's obviously going to be a slow rebuild for them. You can't just overturn that roster in 1 year. I just would have liked to see them make more of an impact this first year.
Maybe I'm salty because they made my mock draft wrong, but I just really thought that this was the year for the first round wide receiver for the Packers. Really would have liked to see them take Jackson Smith and Jigba there at 13. Again, Lucas Van Ness there felt a little high to me, but we'll see how he's able to develop. I actually like the double dip at tight end. Excuse me, the double dip at tight end there. Musgrave, I think at 42 was a steal, and then I think Tucker Kraft in the third was a good pick as well. Jaden Reed was one of my favorite late round wide receiver targets, and he ends up going here at 50. So I'm a little hesitant to say that this is a good pick. I mean, I think he's a good talent. You added a good wide receiver talent to your team. 50 is much higher than I thought possible, and I think most people thought possible. So, I think he'll do well there. I think he'll quickly become the 3 there, if not the 2. We'll see how long it takes for him to overtake Dobbs. But I really would have liked to see them take Jackson Smith and Jigba there in the first. Anytime you can get the guy who put Will Levis on the bench in the 5th round, I guess you got to do it. And then a kicker in the 6th, I obviously hate, but they did have a plethora of picks here. Lou Nichols out of Central Michigan, running back, was my favorite late round pick of theirs. Be interesting to see what happens with that running back room with Aaron Jones getting up in age and AJ Dillon's contract coming to a close.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I gave him a bit too low of a grade there for double dicks. Moving on to the Los Angeles Rams. I have it here. They actually made 15 selections, which according to my math is the most in history.
Is it?
What's that?
Is it actually?
That's what I found. I looked, and that's to the best of my ability, that's what I found. So moving to the Rams, they didn't have a first-round pick. Came back on day 2 for Steve Avila, interior offensive lineman out of TCU. Byron Young, edge out of Tennessee. Kobe Turner, defensive lineman out of Wake. On day 3, with the 128th pick, they go Stetson Bennett, quarterback out of Georgia. Davis Allen, tight end out of Clemson. Travius Hodges-Tomlinson, cornerback at TCU. Zach Evans, running back out of Ole Miss. And then Mr. Relevant, Deshaun Johnson, defensive lineman out of Toledo. I gave them a C.
What did I give them? I gave them a D+. So
Yeah.
a little meaner here. I mean, obviously no first round pick. I do like Steve Avila. I think that he immediate plug and play fills a need there at guard. Stetson Bennett in the 4th round. I mean, I know that you weren't as surprised as I was, but that just of all their needs, at that level to do that. I mean, I know they made somewhere around 20, 25 picks, but that, you could have filled a better need there to me. This draft smells like the end of Les Snead and Sean McVay to me. Maybe I'm wrong there. Snead's been around for like 12 years. But this draft stinks. I like Steve Avila. I like late round. I'm probably going to mispronounce this, but Puka Nacua of BYU, one of my favorite late round wide receivers. But that doesn't mean he's going to turn into anything. He drafted a punter. Congrats, Zach Evans, running back out of Ole Miss. I mean, I like him as a talent, but again, not exactly filling a need there. Just did not like this draft at all.
Yeah, I have another stat for you. I'm just knocking these out.
Nice.
But again, I'm finding these and I tweeted them. So who else is going to talk about them but me? The last time the Rams had a first round pick in the NFL draft, they selected Jared Goff in 2016.
Yeah, I did know that. That's wild. That's absolutely wild. They do have one next year if they don't trade it, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's
Maybe this is the Caleb Williams tank, and we're just not paying attention. I mean, this was a bad draft. Period. This was definitely a bad draft to take 15 players in. I think maybe that's part of why I hate this draft so much. Is they took 15 players, but the only reason most of these guys might make the roster is because their roster is so bad and lacks depth so much. I mean, if they had traded picks for future picks, which that's the opposite of what the Rams have done. But if they had traded for future picks, I maybe would have given them a little more credit. This is not the draft to take 15 players in.
Utilizing that soundboard tonight.
Fair.
Like the only, I'll just say this and then we'll move on from them. You went 15 players, and like you kind of alluded to, that's a lot to invest on a draft that just doesn't have a whole lot of quality depth to it, I guess is a nice way of saying it. I thought that they could have used some of those picks and moved around the board a little bit more and kind of done some different things there. And obviously they just kind of didn't do that. So moving on to the Minnesota Vikings. 23rd overall in the first round, they went Jordan Addison, wide receiver out of Southern California. Didn't have a second round pick. Came back in round 3 for Mekhi Blackman, cornerback out of Southern California. And then on day 3, Jay Ward, cornerback out of LSU. Jacqueline Roy, defensive lineman out of LSU. Jaron Hall, quarterback out of BYU. And then Dwayne McBride, running back out of UAB. I gave them a B-. Very few picks here. Love Jordan Addison. Kind of, we've talked about this several times on the podcast. I thought that he really kind of showed off some of his versatility at USC. Maybe a down year when compared to what he did at Pitt. But I thought he showed maybe a little bit more of what he can do. Outside of that, Blackman and Ward are two defensive backs that I like. Not a huge fan of Jaron Hall. Not really sure what their plan is there. I think they'll maybe be looking early in the 2024 draft for a quarterback. And then finally with Dwayne McBride, running back that I love, had a ton of space to run at UAB. Didn't really face a lot of competition. So it'll kind of be interesting to see what he can do at this level.
Yeah, before I get to Jordan Addison, who I love, this draft to me, the conversation is around the backup running back and the backup quarterback positions. I mean, they gave up on Kellen Mond after 2 years. That's a rough third round pick decision. Obviously, their former coach was not a fan. Dwayne McBride, I'm a fan as well. I think it's interesting to see where he fits in, if he's a fourth running back, fifth running back, if Dalvin Cook sticks around or not. If they move forward with Alexander Madison, I still have Ty Chandler from last year's draft. They've got a special teamer that can play the backup position there as well. But I think Dwayne McBride kind of protects them a little bit if Dalvin Cook gets cut or traded or moves on, and then Madison steps up. They've got Ty Chandler and potentially McBride to rotate there. And then, like I said, the backup quarterback position is interesting. I still think that Minnesota has gone into the last couple drafts like trying to find a guy at quarterback and just has been unable to do so, or unwilling to pay the cost that it takes. So, Jaron Hall, I doubt he's around, very long for them, but I'm sure they saw something that gives them a chance to to maybe be the guy if they have to, rather than pay Kirk Cousins 35-40 million again. But with that being said, Jordan Addison paired up with Justin Jefferson, I think is a pretty scary duo. On top of part of this draft, I give him credit for trading for TJ Hawkinson as well. A 2 wasn't a small price to pay for a tight end, but those 3 guys at the top of the depth chart in the passing game, I think is pretty dynamic. Gives Kirk a safe floor as far as you're not going to hate him too much for his performance this year. John Vogel, NFL Draft Lounge contributor, had an article about KJ Osborne recently that is certainly worth checking out. I think that the Jordan Addison pick is probably more about not trusting Osborne to be the 2. He feels differently. So, I mean, Osborne had his moments last year. We'll see how they're able to mesh all those guys together. But really like Jordan Addison, I think he'll come out of the gates hot, and having all the attention on Justin Jefferson's not going to hurt.
Yeah, I mean, just real quick, I'll talk about the quarterback position here a little bit, because they have kind of been in like that purgatory area where you're not up there close enough to find a impactful quarterback. You're also, kind of further back where, you're making the playoffs, you're getting close to it. Can you turn that corner with Cousins? Obviously, I don't think that there's a future for Kirk Cousins in Minnesota, which is kind of why I think that this 2024 NFL draft is going to be that year where they almost have to address that position.
We'll see. I mean, there's going to be enough guys. I was talking with Vogel about that on Twitter recently. There's at least 5 guys that are in the conversation for first round picks. So you would think that they'd get a shot at least one of them, but they're going to be a decent team again this year. They're going to have, I think they're going to have a minimum above average offense. The defense is not great. They definitely overperformed last year, and I think they'll have a letdown this year, but not a top 5 situation. They're not in the Caleb Williams sweepstakes or anything.
Right. Moving on to the New Orleans Saints and Derek Carr. First round, pick 29, they went Brian Bresee, defensive lineman out of Clemson. On day 2, in the second round, they went Isaiah Foskey, edge out of Notre Dame. Third round, Kendre Miller, running back out of TCU. And then on day 3, Nick Saldiveri, interior offensive lineman out of Old Dominion. Jake Haener, quarterback out of Fresno State. Jordan Howden, safety out of Minnesota. And then in the 6th round, they went A.T. Perry, wide receiver out of Wake Forest. I gave him an A-. I love this draft for them. Brian Bresee, I thought he was going to come off the board earlier. Same thing with his teammate, Miles Murphy. Isaiah Foskey was somebody that I was kind of high on coming into the year. Obviously, maybe a little bit of disappointment there for his performance in the season. But I think that he adds a lot to their team. Kendre Miller's running back I like as well. And then, A.T. Perry I thought was tremendous value. He's somebody that I thought was maybe a late day 2, early day 3 pick. And then in the 4th round, they went Jake Haener to back up Derek Carr. I kind of see those 2 guys as pretty close comparisons. So if for whatever reason Carr does go down, I don't think there's a big difference there for them to tweak that offense for him.
Yeah, this isn't an A for me. I mean, I thought it was okay. I don't hate it. I mean, Brian Bresee, obviously, we've talked about it. He was in the conversation for first overall kind of preseason and slipped. Still a good talent, kind of an up and down career based off of what we thought it was going to be. Foskey it's an okay one for me there. 40 felt a little high. Fairly productive, but kind of limited as far as pass rush repertoire, I would say. Like Kendre Miller, not sure that the 71st pick was the time to address running back. I mean, running back is an issue for them, especially with Kamara's legal situation up in the air. So I'm not surprised they addressed running back. I think I would have waited a little bit. but I don't hate any of these picks. I definitely like A.T. Perry at 195. I think that's fantastic. So this may be like a C plus, B minus for me. But I don't hate it.
Yeah, no, you're just wrong. New York Giants, 24th overall. They went Deontay Banks, cornerback out of Maryland. On day 2, they go John Michael Schmitz, interior offensive lineman out of Minnesota. Jalen Hyatt, wide receiver out of Tennessee. And on day 3, they go Eric Gray, running back out of Oklahoma. Trey Hawkins, the third cornerback out of Old Dominion. Jordan Riley, defensive lineman out of Oregon. And Javarius Owens, safety out of Houston. I gave them a C plus. I like what they did, but I don't love it. I don't know. I just don't see excitement, I guess is a nice way of putting it. Jalen Hyatt has speed. He's going to stretch that defense, but I don't know what else he can bring to an offense. I really want to see him kind of develop more. Eric Gray, running back out of Oklahoma, is going to back up Saquon Barkley. But we'll see what happens there. Obviously, I think Barkley's going to be there for a little bit longer. We'll see what happens.
Just in case I was getting called too much of a homer, I had too much bias. I actually do like this draft. I gave it a B plus myself. I think, it was pretty clear they liked Deontay Banks. I do think that they got sniped a little bit with the wide receivers going right off the board right before them. I do think that I don't know if it was Jordan Addison or Quentin Johnson, but I do think that those were in play and definitely a need for them. But for them to get Deontay Banks at 24, immediate plug and play starter for them, obviously. And same thing with John Michael Schmitz, another immediate plug and play. Jalen Hyatt might get there. I'm a fan of his ability. He gets called a one-trick pony, and people have been dogging the Tennessee offense, and I think that's a little overblown, but there's an element of truth there to it. But personally, I was pretty shocked to see him fall to 73, so I think that was great value for him. Eric Gray, I actually think that was a good pick for them there in the 5th round, not just as a backup, but who knows what will end up with Saquon Barkley. This could easily be his final year, and I don't believe he's signed the franchise tag yet, and I don't think he's exactly happy with getting the franchise tag. And obviously they devoted a lot of dollars over to Daniel Jones. So Eric Gray could be the guy sooner rather than later. But overall, yeah, this was a B plus for me. Also, Darren Waller was part of this, part of the draft pick capital here. So great job. Second year for Joe Schoen, I believe. Yeah. Great second draft for Schoen.
All right. Moving on to the Philadelphia Eagles. Let's talk about it. 9th overall, they go Jalen Carter, defensive lineman out of Georgia. Pick 30, Nolan Smith, edge out of Georgia. Again in the 3rd, they go Tyler Steen, offensive tackle out of Alabama. Sidney Brown, safety out of Illinois. 4th round, they go Keely Ringo, cornerback out of Georgia. 6th round, I guess they didn't love Stetson Bennett. They go Tanner McKee, quarterback out of Stanford. Or maybe they didn't think Bennett could play defense. 7th round, they go Mora Ojomoa. Butchered that, defensive lineman out of Texas. I give him an A. I think it's interesting. Obviously, they love what they're doing in the SEC, specifically at Georgia
and Alabama.
Man, you're pushing the chips in. I think it's it's something that can either work really, really well or blow up in your face. Yeah. Let's hear your thoughts on that, Sean, as an Eagles fan.
Yeah, open bias here, but this is an A++. How could you ask for anything better? Nolan Smith was in the conversation at 10. They end up getting him at 30. Obviously, Jalen Carter has the questionable character concerns, which, to be fair to Philly, is not typically something they would go for. I think that is something they explored thoroughly. And then obviously they know that they have his buddy Jordan Davis quite literally next to him on the line. So, you know, some risk there for sure. But to be able to pair those two in the middle for the next 5+, maybe hopefully longer years is quite attractive. Eagles needed to address the defensive line and get more younger on the line, I guess I should say. Obviously, they had a great year last year with 70 sacks, one of the all-time high sack teams. So Nolan Smith at 30, I think, is a slam dunk. Tyler Steen, they announced him as a guard, so I think he'll compete for really the only open position there at right guard. You get to play between best center in the league, Jason Kelsey, and best right tackle in the league, Lane Johnson. So not asking a whole lot out of you. He'll compete with last year's second round pick, Cam Jurgens. Sidney Brown obviously needs to show out in training camp, but I think we'll have a pretty good shot at the starting safety job. It's the two positions where the Eagles are most vulnerable or lack star power, at least, is the safety position. And off-ball linebacker Nakobe Dean will step up there, but will be forced to step up there. Tanner McKee, not my favorite, but I think in the 6th round that gives you a guy that's going to compete with Ian Book there for the third quarterback spot. Keely Ringo to get him in the 4th on top of all the rest of the stuff. I mean, you can't do better than this. DeAndre Swift's part of this. Did I mention that? Did I mention he's from Georgia? This is the big risk there at 9. They did trade up from 10 to 9. I'm curious if they had any competition for that, or they just like Carter that much that they didn't want to lose out. But with admitted bias, absolute A++.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little shocked that they didn't maybe look at Warren McClendon, offensive tackle out of Georgia, or Warren Erickson, interior offensive lineman.
It's because those are offensive players. We take the Georgia defense.
Is that what it is? Okay. What about Robert Beal Jr. or Tyke Smith or Chris Smith II?
There's a safety out of Georgia I thought they might take.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. It's just it's interesting.
Carter, Jordan Davis, Nolan Smith, all on the line together for a while. It's going to be fun to watch. I hope it develops into what we think it can, obviously, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. San Francisco 49ers. Honestly, they didn't have a 1st or 2nd round pick, so they come in 87th overall for Jair Brown, cornerback out of Penn State. 99th overall, they go Jake Moody, kicker out of Michigan. Cameron Latu, tight end out of Alabama. And then on day 3, there you go, Robert Beal Jr., edge out of Georgia. D. Winters, linebacker out of TCU. I planned that. Braden Willis, tight end out of Oklahoma. Ronnie Bell, wide receiver out of Michigan in the 7th round. And Jalen Graham, linebacker out of Purdue. Gave him a C. Obviously, it's tough when you don't have a 1st or 2nd round pick, but using that 99th overall on a kicker and just kind of going down this board on guys that I just, don't really love and don't see a ton of potential in is, a little bit of a head scratcher for me.
Yeah. I'm showing some bias here again, but the conversation in the NFC, I think, is between 2, maybe 3 teams, and the San Francisco 49ers are in that conversation, and the other team or 2 had a good day and they did not, or a good weekend and they did not, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, yeah, it hurts to not have your 1st and 2nd round pick, and I ding them a little bit for that. Part of that's Trey Lance, which as of now looks terrible. Part of that's Christian McCaffrey, which obviously great talent, but they did give up 3 picks for him, so it's not great. And then with their 2nd pick, they take a kicker. 3rd pick, they take. I like Cameron Latu out of Alabama. I don't foresee him being a starting tight end in the NFL. I think he could be a guy that sticks around for a while and is a good 2nd option. I do like Luter out of South Alabama, at least as like a good size speed guy, kind of prototypical size. Um, but overall, this hate to say this every time, but this team didn't get better after this draft, and the teams that they're fighting for in the NFC did.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you lose most of your coaching staff to the Texans. Moving on to the Seattle Seahawks. 5th overall, they go Devin Witherspoon, cornerback out of Illinois. 20th overall, they go JSN, wide receiver out of Ohio State. On day 2, Derek Hall, edge out of Auburn. Zach Charbonnet, running back out of UCLA. On day 3, Anthony Bradford, interior offensive lineman out of LSU. Cameron Young, defensive lineman out of Mississippi State. Mike Morris, edge out of Michigan. Oluwatimi, interior offensive lineman out of Michigan. Jarek Reed, the second safety out of New Mexico State, and then Kenny McIntosh, running back out of Georgia. I gave him a B. I love Witherspoon. I really thought he was a fit there. I didn't think that they do it. I thought they may go Carter there. They don't. Derek Hall is another one I love. I'm not as high on JSN as maybe obviously you are and others are. Zach Charbonnet is somebody that I love. I thought that was great value there at 52. But it's I can't knock them for it. I think that they've done a great job here. For me, maybe a B is about average, maybe a little bit above average of a grade, which I think kind of reflects what they've done here.
Yeah, I mean, I think a B's fine. Witherspoon at 5. I mean, it's definitely high, but I'm not going to knock him for it. I am a big Jackson Smith and Jigba fan, so I got to give him credit there for getting him at 20. Derek Hall at 37. Charbonnet, though, I mean, I don't. Not only do I not see that as a value, I mean, you took a running back at 40 something last year. Perhaps you see them as good compliments. Perhaps they didn't like what they got out of Kenneth Walker last year. Kind of, he's certainly a talented runner, but maybe a little more boom bust than they had hoped for. Maybe they didn't realize that he can't really catch the ball, and Charbonnet does, and so they do complement each other. But back-to-back years, 2nd round pick running back is at least an eyebrow raiser to me. I don't hate him. I don't dislike Charbonnet, and I don't dislike him around 52, but I don't necessarily think they got any value. But they got good players. They got better. No arguments on a B.
Moving on to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. 19th overall, they go Kalijah Cansey, defensive lineman out of Pitt. 2nd round, Cody Mauk, interior offensive lineman out of North Dakota State. 3rd round, Yaya Diaby, edge out of Louisville. On day 3, just kind of going through some of these guys. I see Payne Durham, tight end out of Purdue, and Trey Palmer, wide receiver out of Edge, is a couple of guys that are probably just going to maybe be the only impactful players here. I gave him a B. I mean, looking at it, maybe that's a little high. Kalijah Cansey and Cody Mauk are two guys that I love. Obviously, Cansey's going to have to prove himself there with his measurements. I think his wingspan is really, really small, or his hands, one of the two. Payne Durham, tight end out of Purdue. Obviously, they moved on from Cameron Brate. So you have to bring somebody in. Payne Durham, for me, was a little bit of a stiff runner at the Senior Bowl, but still made plays. Really like it there in the 5th round for value purposes. And even Trey Palmer, wide receiver out of Nebraska, there in the 6th round. Don't hate it. I think that they got a little better.
Yeah, don't hate it. A little lower on it than you are. Do like Yaya Diaby, edge out of Louisville, had a productive final year there, as well as just crushed the combine. Cody Mock, a fan of the guy. He certainly got the personality, missing the teeth. 48 is higher than I probably would have guessed pre-draft, but they need so much help on the offensive line. I think that's good. Kalijah Cansey, certainly undersized. Everybody wants to make the Aaron Donald comparisons. He is a good. He does pair well with Vita Vea there on the interior D line. Certainly 19 was a little higher than I saw coming, but it's not a bad pick. The rest of the draft's okay. But Diaby at 82 feels like quite the value. We'll see if he's able to develop into a productive pass rusher in the NFL.
Yeah, maybe they should have gone after some Georgia Bulldogs. Finally, we got the Washington Commanders. 16th overall, they go Emmanuel Forbes, cornerback out of Mississippi State. On day 2, Jartavius Martin, safety out of Illinois. Ricky Stromberg, interior offensive lineman out of Arkansas. And on day 3, Braden Daniels, tackle out of Utah. KJ Henry, edge out of Clemson. Chris Rodriguez Jr., running back out of Kentucky. And Andre Jones, edge out of Louisiana. I gave him a C-. As I wrote on NFL Draft Lounge, which you can read, because if I don't talk about it, who will? I think it's kind of like a put up or shut up year for them.
Yes.
Especially for Ron Rivera. I think he's really got to prove that he's going in the right direction if he wants to save his job.
Probably shut up.
Yeah. And right. And I just don't see it out of this draft class. I just don't. Like, I'm looking at every single player that they've selected, and Sean, I see a better player at every single one of them.
Yeah, I guess I don't disagree. I mean, Emmanuel Forbes is such a stud in college. I'm kind of rooting for him. I'm not a Commanders fan at all. Kind of rooting for him. Such a talented guy, but 166 pounds to go at 16. Deontay Banks still on the board there. Actually, was Christian Gonzalez went 14? He didn't go over Christian Gonzalez. Okay,
yeah,
that would have been really nuts. With Deontay Banks, still there, that shocked me. I do think extremely talented though, so we'll see. Chris Rodriguez Jr. out of Kentucky. I like him in the 6th round there, but I'm with you. It feels somewhat similar to the Dallas draft in that it felt like they just reached for need. I don't know if they got sniped on the picks they wanted. If they were, I don't know who you wanted at 16 that you expected to be available that was gone that made you take Emmanuel Forbes. But yeah, I mean C-. I'm with you. They aren't bad picks. They just aren't good picks.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for draft grades. I think moving on from here, I think we're kind of shifting focus to the 2024 NFL draft, which you can read some of on NFLDraftLounge.com. Because again, if I don't talk about it, who will? And again, you can find my stuff on Twitter at BrianLamb_ISN and read all of it at NFLDraftLounge.com.
Same here, NFLDraftLounge.com and just at Sean Balzer on Twitter. Excited to dive into the 2024 class, see what we think today and how much that's going to change over the next 11, 12 months. These quarterbacks are going to be interesting to follow. Everybody's ready to put Caleb Williams at 1 and Marvin Harrison at 2. I assume that won't actually happen, but we'll see if they're able to maintain that all off season and then follow these other 5 to 7 quarterbacks.
Yeah, it should be a hoot.
Should be.
Yep. And don't forget to rate and review the podcast. Tell us what you think. And we'll catch you next week. Take care of yourself and each other.